Today's men are much more serious about choosing a suit or a car than they are about choosing a wife. As a result, more and more marriages end in divorce, and their children grow up to be unhappy people. I don't know where I read that expression, but it is very true. The reason for divorce these days is cheating on one of the spouses in most cases. And if men's adultery is condemned by everybody, especially with women, then women's adultery is often justified by the same women who drive a woman to adultery. Justifications abound. Husband a tyrant, he does not see me as a woman, not loving, not satisfied in an intimate sense, and so on. When a woman commits adultery, her brain usually shuts down. She doesn't think about the consequences and lives only by her feelings and emotions. In my opinion, a woman's cheating is much scarier than a man's cheating. An unfaithful woman destroys her whole family, her children, her husband, her parents, and above all her own soul. All betrayals have one thing in common: sooner or later they will be found out about them. And most treason ends the same way. Very seldom it is possible to build something new on the grief of abandoned loved ones. It is almost impossible to build on happiness. And then, after a while, the second stage of infidelity begins, an attempt to return to the family. I love only you, I was a fool, I can't do without you and the children, and so on. The ending is different. Some accept the prodigal wife, some don't. But regardless of the ending, there will never be happiness in such a family. I married the girl I loved when I was 20 years old. She was my age, and the family life that was to come seemed clear and unclouded to me. Our love affair was developing, following all the canons of the genre. We met at a friend's birthday party, dated for almost a year, and then got married. She was the first woman I ever fell in love with. When my parents expressed doubts about getting married, I said I would pack my bags and just go to her. Anyway, we got married. A year later a son was born, and 3 years later a daughter. Olga, my wife's name, I really loved. Over the years the feeling grew stronger and stronger. I had no reason to suspect her of cheating because she never gave any reason. I trusted her completely, not humiliated by jealousy like everyone else. We quarreled sometimes, but the quarrels did not turn into swearing. We quickly found common ground and made peace. We lived like that for 17 years, and then everything changed for the worse. Olga suddenly became irritable, started scandals, and on an empty place, she abruptly changed her image and turned into a brunette, knowing very well that I never liked this type of women. She got new clothes and perfume. My wife began to regularly stay late at work, explaining it with far-fetched reasons. Our intimate life came to a grinding halt. Such changes in family life could not just happen. I started to think about it and came to the conclusion that it all started after the reunion. So something had happened at that reunion that had changed my wife so much. I knew some of her classmates and decided to ask them carefully about that reunion. From them I learned many interesting things about my wife. It turns out that at school Olga was in love with a classmate of hers, Sasha. He was quite handsome and was very popular with his classmates. After school, life divorced them. He left for another city to study. There he married the daughter of a factory director, had a child. Olga grieved, and then she married me. So they'd existed in parallel, in different cities, until Sasha was transferred to our city, and they crossed paths at that unfortunate reunion. They met, and an old love flared up. In general, a fairly banal situation that occurs very often. They slept together that night and could not stop. Olga was looking for any reason to be with her lover. She invented such excuses that any secret agent would have invited. I already knew the name and address of Olga's lover. It was a small matter to cover the lovers on the hot stuff and close the subject. I must say that I felt very shitty. My love for Olga was becoming mixed with a sense of squeamishness, the knowledge that my wife was being used. The other man left me no prospect for a further life together with her. But still, before making a final decision on the fate of our family, I decided to first talk with his wife. I asked her directly about the lover. In response, she started me a huge scandal with hysterics, accusing me of all the sins, and most importantly of his broken life. Not only did I ruin her life, but I dared to question her honesty about women in the name of treachery. I waited a couple more days, and one evening, when my beloved was once again delayed at work, I arrived at the address where my lover lived. He opened the door for me himself, and in response to my question where, He nodded toward the kitchen. Olga was sitting with one leg propped up on a stool drinking tea. On seeing me, she sort of flinched and said angrily, "Why did you come?" "I love him." Just like that, without any preamble. Basically, it was all clear to me, but I made one last attempt and tried to remind her about the children. But she said that the children would stay with her and her new lover, but let them live with me for a while until they got their lives together. I no longer had the energy or desire to continue this conversation. I told my wife that I would not talk about it anymore, that this was the last conversation we would have. I would file for divorce myself. Olga turned away, letting me know that our conversation was over. I silently left the apartment, climbed down the stairs, opened the door of the staircase and went outside. It was raining outside. I lifted my collar and walked along the wet houses. I remember that evening well, the last night when I was still married to Olga. Both my heart and soul ached. Maybe I should not have given up. Maybe I should have fought for my wife, tried to win her back. But something told me that it was all in vain. She would never come back. Her empty, indifferent eyes, those of a stranger, were standing in front of me again. When I arrived home, I explained to my children that my mother had gone on a long business trip. I dared not tell my children the truth, though I knew that I would have to do it someday. But my son asked me, "Mom left for another husband?" I nodded. He hugged me, and we sat like that into the night. The next day, I filed for divorce. 2 months went by. There was still a lot of red tape to go through. We were given time to reconcile. The children live with me. All this time, Olga was in no hurry to make them happy with a new father. One evening, my ex-wife came to me. She announced to me that she had left her Sasha because, in her words, she realized that she had never loved anyone but me. "Please forgive me, do what you want with me, but just don't persecute me." I silently listened to her and explained that her former husband had died there that night in her lover's apartment. I also said that I would not prevent her from seeing her children, but that I would never live with her. Olga looked at me with eyes inflamed with tears. In them, I saw both pain and remorse, and the former love of the last. I managed to hold myself together. And Olga left the same evening. She swallowed pills, trying to do something very bad. But a neighbor called an ambulance. Olga was saved. Her parents took her home from the hospital. Several times she called me and asked for forgiveness, but I was still adamant, though my heart and soul hurt a lot. I still loved her and understood that I would never be able to love anyone like that again. Olga now lived with her parents, regularly visited her children, and tried to establish some kind of relationship with me, hoping that I would still forgive her and we would be together. But I will never be able to forgive such things. That is the story of the hero of our story. Write your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and like it. There are a lot of wonderful stories ahead of you. Well, as always, I wish you a good mood. And all the best to you. Thank you for watching.